Greetings, 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 everyone. Hello, hello, hello. How is everyone doing? Welcome, welcome, welcome. We are here this evening, and we're glad those who could join us this evening to talk with Dr. Dupree, both but Dr. Dupree's. Thank you all for coming. Thank you, thank you. We are always here at Freedom very, very appreciative of those who will help us and their giftings and helping us, especially in these times. We thank all of you for joining in and continue to join in. And we are going to really have a very informal interview with the Duprees. I am not Martha Stewart or Oprah or Okra or any of those. So please have no expectation on my side. And from them, I expect them, they're at home, and we are grateful that they are here to join us. And we are going to have a wonderful time and discuss some things about COVID, about the vaccine. And we might actually entertain just a little bit of questions, but we want to be respectful of their time. So without further ado, I'm going to bring in the Dupree family. So give me 1 second, and here they are. Hey, Dupree family.
Hi, everybody. Hello.
It is so wonderful for you guys to join us. Let me move this banner off y'all face so we can see it. There you go. So we are so grateful for you guys. Look at you guys, just a smiling away. Everybody saying good evening to you guys, just so you know, if you can't see.
Good evening, everybody.
All right, we got music. I didn't know we was going to have music again. Hold on, wait a minute. So we are...
And a dog. And a dog.
Oh, listen. Listen, we are just grateful. And a dog. Look at Bobette. Bobette, we got... So we're playing... This is COVID, vaccines, and Bobette. So we want to make sure we add Bobette to the cycle. So we're just here. We're grateful for you guys. I'm going to pray just to start off, and then I would like you guys just to introduce yourselves, just a little bit about yourself, histories, and your background, schooling, and such, and where you guys work. Okay, so let's start off with that. So Father, we just thank you. We thank you for this evening. We thank you for this time. We thank you that it'll be just a smooth run, smooth time, that all connections will work properly. Father, we pray that all the things that you would like for us to talk about and discuss to help your people, Father, as we help negotiate this time of COVID and vaccines, and Father, that we would honor you while we do so. Thank you for Davido and Ranel for putting their gifts on display for us to help us. And Father, we thank you for them. They are a blessing to not only our church, but to the world. Father, we just thank you for all those who are going to be on and they're going to join us, that they will be able to retain some of these things that we are discussing tonight, and that it will be helpful and fruitful for them. We pray, nevertheless, not our will, God, but your will be done on this earth. We pray in Jesus' name. Amen. So let's start off by you guys kind of introducing yourselves, a little bit about who you are, your backgrounds, and we'll go from there. Can we start off with you, Davida?
Oh, sure. My name is Davido Malcolm Dupree. The most important thing you know is I'm Helen Dupree's favorite son. Beyond that, I guess I'm here now because of my training in psychology, cognition and development in particular. So I'm on the research side of the psychology family, meaning generating new knowledge about the mind, how it works, and all kinds of things related to how we function psychologically. The other thing important to know is that I really have always, no matter what the specific topic of the research was, focused on this concept of resilience. And resilience refers to our ability to rebound from adverse experiences, right? Stuff happens. But I've always been interested in, when we are able to effectively rebound, get back on track, what are the things that influence it, right? When we don't, what are the challenges? And so I'm always looking for the good news story in that.
Okay, and Doc, go ahead.
Okay, and I'm Ranel Cherie Dupree. I'm originally from Gary, Indiana, I
Guys, to keep on going. We know that your dog and your house is lived in, so we know.
Oh,
Just keep
yes. I did my undergraduate training in public policy at University of Chicago. And then from there, I completed my science courses or med school courses at Penn, a postbaccalaureate program at University of Pennsylvania. And then earned my medical degree from Drexel University College of Medicine here in Philadelphia. And from there, went through residency at Abington Family Medicine, and I currently practice as a family medicine attendant at Wincote Family Medicine, which is a family medicine practice in the Abington Jefferson system in Elkins Park.
Okay, wonderful, wonderful. So let's, without any further ado, again, we're going to be respectful of your time. You guys have something planned for this evening, so we want to make sure that we are respectful of that. Let's start out and get started real quick with our first question. Our first question for the both of you. You can either one or both of you can chime in on any of these questions, speak as long or as short as you want. What are some of the trends, good or bad, that you guys are observing with COVID? Like, and for example, I was speaking to you guys about it before, like, is sometimes being home a good thing for the family, or are we seeing some trends that are not as so good? So what do you guys see as some of the good or bad trends that you see are happening now?
Okay. Yeah. So I would say some of the, at least one of the good trends I would say is that people have begun to reestablish with the healthcare system. So I think being in the midst of a pandemic, seeing the effect that it's having, on their communities, on their families, on our world, has caused people to look at their health and, want to know the state of their health. And so we've had, people engaging in the healthcare system, which I think is really important. Another really good thing is that more people are getting the flu shot, and I know that there's a lot of,
Wow.
about the flu shot. But what I will say is that every year people end up in the hospital with the flu. People die from the flu. People end up in ICU on respirators secondary to complications from the flu. And so it's not a benign illness. And even if the vaccine doesn't prevent people from getting sick, it will keep them out of the hospital and oftentimes even keep them out of our office, such that it's a self-limited virus that they can deal with at home. And so the fact that more people are getting the flu vaccine is really good. In terms of, just kind of a straight negative trend, I would say people are suffering with illness and symptoms at home much longer than they should. So we have had things like heart attacks, strokes, and other, really severe illness go undiagnosed for longer periods of time because people are afraid. People are afraid to engage with the ER. People are afraid to engage sometimes with our office because of fear of getting COVID. And, I would just as an aside, just want to say that, in addition, all precautions that can be taken are taken. Keep in mind that we don't want to get COVID as healthcare professionals as much as we want to try to prevent you from getting it. Right. And so if you're in a situation where, you're having symptoms that really need to be evaluated, I encourage people to get evaluated. I would say, some of the other trends that we're seeing are kind of fit into both buckets. You have some people who have used this as an opportunity to get on top of their diet, exercise, get regular sleep, make doctor's appointments that they needed to make. And so as a result of that, some of their health conditions are either resolved or now under good control or on their way to being under good control. And then you also have a subset of people who have in the name of coping, have indulged in emotional eating, binge watching, television. And so as a result of that, we're seeing worsening increases in obesity. We're seeing worsening of diabetes, of high blood pressure, anxiety, depression. When you think about like alcohol and tobacco use, you have a subset of people who were social drinkers or social smokers. And for them, they're not drinking or smoking at all because there is no social, because of COVID. But conversely,
Wow.
people who now are drinking much more in their home, as a way of coping, using, people that was once had stopped smoking are now starting back, or were on the road to stopping, have increased their usage, as a way of coping. So again, just kind of those both buckets. And then to your point, what I would say about the family dynamics is that, yes, we have definitely had people in one camp where kids are spending more time with parents, husband and wives are having time to, connect. And it's really kind of just been this family bonding experience. But on the flip side of that, that time where kids were at school or husbands was at work, served as a respite. And so now you have everybody in the house together. And for some families, that's not working out very well. And it is leading to depression and anxiety because of just not having that outlet that they're, used to having. And so I would say, and this is something that Davida will touch on later, but for better or for worse, COVID has really brought to the forefront some of what our coping strategies look like in sort of unplanned, stressful situations.
All right. Alvito, you want to add on to that?
Yeah, just to piggyback on what my chick said, the terms of the new patterns that I see emerging in this kind of pandemic environment, a major one is just us being thrust into new roles within our families, within our places of work, within our communities. And cool thing is, some of these roles we were prepared for. We discovered some new skills. The downside is some of these roles we weren't prepared for. And that lack of preparation could be a serious source of stress. We've been, in some cases, required to become caregivers in ways we weren't before, to become the lay ministers in our homes in a way we didn't have to be before, to be teachers, personal chefs. Our jobs changed, in the ways that the businesses that we work for had to change in response to COVID. We might become the once sensitive listening ear in our families. We become advisors in ways that we didn't have to before, advocates for proper health care.
Sir, you are preaching.
We become the social directors, when everybody talks about, I'm bored, we got to figure out what we're going to do, right? You don't have complaining. The other thing you see, it's easy to kind of think about what are the negative impacts of COVID, but you see people demonstrating creativity and adaptability, right? Our day-to-day circumstances change in response to COVID. So there are some things that we can't do anymore and some new things we're required to do. And often the cool thing about that is that these are probably things we always had the ability to do, but just didn't have to, right? And so, it actually reveals something to us that probably would not have been revealed otherwise. Now, the next pattern I see can be seen as negative or positive, right? And that's we've experienced new levels of awareness, where it's about us, it's about other people, right? Again, these are unusual circumstances. And so, stuff happens, right? But a sustained stressor like this is major. And it can expose some things in us, right? Maybe we weren't as strong as we thought we were. Maybe, once my regular routine was taken away, the role it played in distracting me from dealing with my stuff, it doesn't play anymore. So all that stuff starts rising to the surface now, right? All those negative thoughts or past experience that you kind of kept at bay by being busy, not so much when you're not as busy anymore, right?
Mm-hmm.
But in the same way, we could also again discover these gifts. We discover that, there really are some good people in the world. When I needed support, people, some who I knew, some who I didn't know, stepped up, right? And then finally, and this is not the least of the things, but I see people shutting down. shutting down,
Wow.
right? Not being able to do the things that they could typically do, right? And I feel like, I don't know if you remember, but when this first hit and things started shutting down, in different ways on social media, we heard these messages like, all those things that you said the time and space to do, this is the time to do it, or you're a fraud, right? This time to do it, or you're never serious, right?
Right. Right.
But it ignored the fact that this was still a stressor.
Right. Right.
This was still a stressor also. Yeah. How am I dealing with being shut down? Right? What new problems did it potentially create for me?
Wow, that's really good. Whew. That was an earful right there. So let's try this one. It's kind of, you guys kind of touched on it a little bit. What are some of the psychological and the physical effects that you have seen, slash what do you see coming down the line? So what do you guys kind of foresee in the future coming down the line in reference to this COVID and the pandemic?
Right. So I think I'm going to break that up into what are the psychological effects first, and then kind of what's the potential long-term impact. So if you might have already guessed, for what I want to make clear is that the pandemic had not necessarily been a negative for everybody, right? We probably experienced a little of both, actually, right? But it's had such a dramatic impact on our lives. It does make sense to ask, what are the long-term psychological and physical effects, right? However, I think it's also appropriate to ask, what influences how I'm impacted by the pandemic, right? Because we had lives before this happened. We had challenges before this happened. Might even had some mental health issues before this ever happened, right? We had coping strategies, some adaptive, some maladaptive before this ever happened. And so it's really kind of an interaction. If I get a little nerdy for a minute, it's really interaction. That's why you don't see the same response for everybody, the same impact for everybody, right? And so I think we first got to start with, why should it affect me at all? And there are a few things, meaning what are the potential triggers? Well, the actual experience of serious COVID-related illnesses and symptoms, either that you experience or you directly observe other people that you know and love experiencing. In some cases, experiencing the death of relatives or friends related to COVID. If it hasn't touched you directly, the fear and anxiety about the possibility of getting it and what it would mean for you, right? This was especially true when it first started, when the shutdown first started, and we really weren't clear about how, it spread. Because I don't know if there was this movie, I can't remember the name of it now, but it was with Denzel Washington. And the whole thing was, there was this invisible force that was attacking people. It was invisible. And the spirit would jump from person to person, right? And for a while, I thought of this COVID like that. You didn't know where it could be. It could have been on the nozzle at the gas tank.
Right.
It could have been on the package of the product that you picked up at the grocery store. It could have been anywhere, right? And you just didn't know. So there's that anxiety about that. Am I doing enough to keep myself safe from it, right? And of course, the social isolation that was required, with social distancing to kind of stem the spread. The loss of income as specific types of businesses were shut down. The inability to do the things that we enjoyed, right? And that was especially important because some of those things that we did that we enjoyed, it was falling, right, Daryl?
Yeah, it was falling. Daryl figured it out for us.
I
thought it was, but I couldn't remember. Thank you, Daryl.
And but some of the things that we used to do that we enjoyed also helped us cope, also helped us regulate our emotions. So we were like separated from the things that were helping us. Mm-hmm. We just didn't know how important they were to us until this happened. So those are some of the reasons why this should be a problem. But what also influences it? Well, I'm gonna get a little fancy for a minute, but you'll get it. Our ability to tolerate uncertainty. Uncertainty meaning not going to happen. And we differ in our ability to live with ambiguity, right? But that can make us vulnerable, right? So what the research says is the greater your tolerance of uncertainty, the better your mental health. But unfortunately, the opposite is also true. The less tolerant of uncertainty you are, the more vulnerable you are, right? And so how does this work? the higher intolerant you are of uncertainty, the more maladaptive coping you're going to engage, right? The more maladaptive coping you engage, the worse the mental health outcomes. So when I say maladaptive strategies, I'm talking about denial, self-blame, substance use, get nice, venting, disengaging,
Wow.
and self-distraction, right? So just to put that in perspective, coping is considered to be adaptive if it either eliminates the source of the stress or significantly reduces your emotional distress, right? So of those things I just mentioned, one that's commonly used right now is self-distraction. And
Wow.
I know you know what I mean by that already. I'm gonna give you examples. Binge watching shows
Uh-oh.
and Hulu. Now I do it, so I'm not judging you, but I want to put it in, right? That self-distraction, if you think about what I just said, what makes coping adaptive, it doesn't remove the source of the stress because you're not actually directly addressing the stress, right? And you might say, well, I got that escape, but guess what? The problem's still there when you get back. So it's not really dealt with, right? May have even gotten worse while you were distracting yourself, right? And so, that how we cope is really important. And there's something interesting that I've been reading about, and that's that it's not so much that adaptive coping strategies help us as the absence of maladaptive coping strategies. That's when Christian walk comes into play, right? So, just aside from COVID for a minute, when we think of like our religious coping is a protective factor, right? But it's protective because it discourages us from doing the maladaptive coping, right? That would exacerbate problems, right?
Wow.
And think about it like this. When we, it might seem insensitive, for instance, for them to say, well, you need to pray more or you need to worship, right? And you might say, well, Dr. Dupree, since you gave the definition, that doesn't directly address the problem. But it depends on your approach to it. Is your prayer a no look pass, or are you praying for direction? For the action you take, for the faith step you need to take, right? When you worship, is that a form of self-distraction? Or the words, giving voice to what you would say if you could say it in a pretty way? Is worship connecting you with God? Is your worship giving the problem over to God so it's not hitting you as stressful as it could, right? And so the question is, why are you doing what you're doing, right?
Wow.
So when our prayers, are we seeking direction so we can somehow, remove the source of the stress, right? When we worship, are we really seeking to connect with God, right? And so, the way we cope can influence how we, get through this thing, right? The two things I want to mention. One, we just spent a lot of time talking about how it affects the individual, but our relationships can suffer also, right? But listen, it's not because our relationships are weak, not because our relationships were problematic. To the contrary, what you see is that facing COVID-related external stress affects how we as individuals function in relationship. For instance, we may become a little bit more hostile or withdrawn or less responsive, but not because of our mates. It's a result of our own difficulties managing this COVID-related stress.
Wow.
Right.
Yeah.
Whew.
And just to bring it from the physical perspective in terms of like what we see coming down the pipeline, what's been so interesting, interesting not necessarily in a good way, is that even with, this is not just people that are in the hospital, but even months after patients have had COVID, we're seeing people that still deal with fatigue, that are still dealing with like chronic headaches, that are still dealing with shortness of breath, that now have decreased exercise tolerance. There are people that are dealing with heart palpitations, like your heart beating, really fast. And then issues with cognitive processing, so what we call kind of brain fog, and depression that seems to be related, to their COVID experience. And so those are kind of the most common. But then also, as many of you guys know and have read and kind of seen, COVID doesn't just affect your pulmonary system, but it also affects other organs. And so it makes your ability to form blood clots easier. And so people can have blood clots in their lungs that can be life-threatening. Blood clots are what can lead to people having heart attack and strokes, and then they're dealing with the long-term consequences of those events. It causes damage to your blood vessels, causing them to be leaky. And so we're looking to see further down the line, is this type of what we call vasculitis, which is what that process is. How is that going to affect your kidneys later on? How that's going to affect your liver? They have looked at scans of the heart months after people have been affected and seen residual effects on heart muscles. And so the question becomes, later on in life, are those people going to suffer from heart failure or other type of, heart complications? And what's really mind-blowing is that, like I said earlier, these aren't the sickest patients that were in the hospital. These are mild people that had mild illness that were able to go through it at home, that sort of went through the days to weeks. And then we're still seeing some of these, long-term effects. And so obviously, I mean, the studies are still ongoing. There's still a lot left to be said about what is going to happen. But I think what's really important is that this attitude that some people have, that I'm young, I'm healthy, even if I get it, I will survive it. And that's true for the majority of the people, but we don't know what surviving means later on, and what that's going to look like for your lungs, for your heart, for your kidney, for your liver, 10, 20, 30 years, from now.
Right. Wow. Listen, you guys have already blown our minds already. We are 27 minutes into this, and we already know we're not going to get through all these questions. So I'm going to kind of ask a quick follow-up on what you just said there, Doctor. So as an example, could somebody be asymptomatic but still have some of these effects down the road? Is that possible?
Yeah, so that's a good question that I don't, so the data that I'm reporting are people that definitely had symptoms during their bout with COVID. So even though that they were mild symptoms, they definitely had symptoms. I think it's going to be interesting to see for patients that had asymptomatic disease, if there are later, what I will tell you is that even people that have asymptomatic disease, when we do look at film, like of their lungs, you can still see changes related to COVID. And so many of those patients end up being pre-symptomatic. So they were asymptomatic at the time, and some of them went on to develop symptoms. But I think what's going to be really interesting, and I think that's a really good question, is for those that are asymptomatic, when we look at scans of their heart or lungs, or, are there going to be residual effects later on down the line? Very good question.
And Doc, when you say films, you're talking about x-rays, right? Are you talking about any other scans or anything? Okay.
Sorry, no, I was talking about chest x-ray in that particular.
That's all right. That's something I'm learning personally, so that's why I figured I asked in case somebody else asked. So, Dr. Davido, let me ask you this. People have been talking about PTSD with COVID and the quarantine. Would you be able to speak to that a little bit about how you see PTSD, and let me make sure I get it. It's post-traumatic Stress syndrome.
Stress disorder.
Disorder. Excuse me. Thank you for correcting me. Would you? Oh, all right.
Can
That's
you
it.
can you see that, Dwayne?
Absolutely, I got it.
Okay, so everybody can be see it. Yeah.
So yeah, I really appreciate the opportunity to really kind of do a deep dive into this, because it does come up and it's real,
Right.
But I think it's important both to talk about it so you could recognize it in yourself and the people you love, but also to rule it out, right? Because the most effective way to treat a problem is to correctly identify it, right?
Right.
And so there's the potential danger of PTSD being overused, right? And so I'll put my nerd hat back on for a second and talk about the DSM definition of it. So this is what the clinicians got together and identified as the criteria for it. And I want to make an important point here. There are 5 different categories of criteria, and you have to represent in all of them, right? So, this pandemic has been referred to as a collective trauma, meaning it's something that's not just specific to Rennell or specific to Davido. We as a society are experiencing it. That's what makes it collective. And its impacts are potentially traumatic, right? So the first thing, they have to be a stressor, right? Whether you're a direct to it, whether you're a witness to it, just heard about it, right? If, as a potential source of stress, this meets the criteria. But it's important to note that simply being exposed to this particular pandemic does not require, allow you to be diagnosed with PTSD, right? And so I'm showing you this just so you can see the clinical definition of it, but I'm going to talk in regular English, right? So in the second category, what they refer to as intrusion symptoms, and they're intrusive because you can't control whether they show up or not. So if you have recurrent memories, right, of things you've seen, heard, experienced, and you can't control it, right? And the potential problem is, as you remember it, you're potentially re-experiencing all the stress that in your body and in your mind that you experienced when you originally were exposed to it. Nightmares, right? Our dream life may reflect, what we've experienced in our waking lives. And so that's less beyond our control. We're less inhibited in our sleep, right? So we're less able to control what those images that show up. And so we see and here, just one of these things have to show up. Avoidance. So am I trying to avoid the people, places, and things that could potentially remind me or cause me to re-experience, the stress, the anxiety, the fear, right? And it might look like this. I might simply refuse to talk about something. That's a form of avoidance, right? Because I don't want to rehearse it because I know I'm going to re-experience all the negative feelings of it. I might avoid certain people, right? Family members who I love, right? Who I've enjoyed, great relationships with. I might avoid them because of what they remind me of. Right. Places, music, everything that I associate with that source of trauma, right? Now, what they refer to as negative alterations in cognition and mood is really significant changes in how we think and emote, right? So in the most extreme form, we might forget certain things, right? And if it's not due to like head injury, alcohol, or drugs, the implication is that our brain is trying to protect us, right? By disassociating from things that might cause us to re-experience trauma, right? We might become much more negative in our conversation.
Okay.
We might blame ourselves or feel like we had more control over things than we really did. The outcomes of things, right? More likely to experience negative emotions compared to positive emotions. Losing interest in things again that we have historically enjoyed. Withdrawn or feeling alienated from other people. And it's not just because of what they did, it's our perception and we act accordingly. And then again, just experiencing a more restricted range of emotions, right? two of those things, right? So you see here, you have to experience, when you said syndrome, you were right, it's a collection of symptoms, right?
Wow.
And then finally, here's some things that we might see, but may not think of it as related to PTSD, right? So if someone becomes more irritable, aggressive, we might not think to ourselves, oh, you must have PTSD. You're like, why are you tripping? Right? It ain't that deep, right? If they gave the so-called self-destructive or reckless behavior, you're like, again, why are you doing this now, right? In an odd way, this self-destructive or reckless behavior may be a way of trying to establish some control in their lives. Maybe maladaptive, but in terms of how we think about it, if I'm feeling much more vulnerable, as if my life is out of my control, I might feel like one way of taking back to control is I'll determine when I die. I'll determine when I'm exposed to risk, right?
Right.
Hypervigilance, just being much more wary of the potential threats, right? And having exaggerated responses, having difficulty concentrating, right? We say, why aren't you locked in? Why aren't you focused? We don't necessarily link that back to PTSD. Then, of course, like sleep disturbances, either sleeping longer than we normally do, sleeping less than we normally do, having inconsistent sleep patterns, all those things. But it has to be that collection of things, right?
Wow. Whew. That there was a brainful. So those who are commenting and putting in about questions, I do see your questions. Some of those questions we actually are about to address now or address in here. We won't be able to get to all the questions. We're just not going to have that much time. But hopefully we'll be able to get both the doctors and their busy schedule back on here so we can have more discussion. So let me dig into this just for a quick second because it's come up on the side of the questions here. Being that the vaccines, I'm going to talk about vaccines for a quick sec. Being that the vaccines usually take a long time, the studies are usually years or so. I think some of them can be even longer. How confident are you guys in this vaccine and its safety?
Yeah, I'll take that question and I'm gonna try to deal with kind of all the questions that have come up related to the vaccine that I could think of that people will have. And so hopefully all of your questions will be answered through this, but I'm happy to answer more. So I am confident in the safety of the vaccine. And I do believe that the risk and the side effects associated with the vaccine are much less than the potential risk associated with having COVID. And so I do recommend the vaccine. I have gotten the vaccine already, and I can talk to you about my experience as well. But let me try to get to, some of your burning questions. So in terms of the too fast, usually part of the reason why vaccines take the time that they need to take is because of money that needs to go into, being able to produce the vaccine, and then just also the manpower to do the different phases of the vaccine. There was a ton of money thrown at this. And then there was collaborations made to be able to get through the phases of the trials that needed to be done. And so the quickness is not because any scientific corners were cut. It was simply because the resources and all hands on deck allowed it to be produced in the time that it was, the motivation was because, of this pandemic and the deaths and things that have been lost. And so, that's one thing. The other thing I'll say about that is that so Pfizer's study, I think, included 44,000 people. Moderna's was 30,000. And when you look at all of the pediatric vaccines that we give out now, that is the same amount of people that are involved in. I think the difference here is the time, which is what we talked about. But one of the things that I'll mention later is that most sort of severe side effects that you're going to see with any vaccine are typically seen definitely within the first 6 months, but those that are most severe within the first few months. And so while you need more time to see about these rare, side effects, we should have seen any severe ones that we would see. And I'll talk about that a little bit later. The other thing I want to mention, so there's questions about this mRNA technology and it being new. And it really isn't new. It's new in the sense that we've never had a vaccine that used this technology, but it's been studied as a potential for the past 15 years. And this just created the opportunity to be able to, sort of put that into action. But in terms of all of the science behind it, it's been studied for a while. The other thing that I actually just sort of read about was about there's something going around social media about it better than I do about this microchip being put into this MR.
Yeah, that was one of the questions somebody was asking about. How does it affect you deal with your DNA and microchips being put in?
So I'm gonna get to that. So the mRNA. So, and not to try to get too scientific, but in our cells, in our cell nucleus, our DNA is made into these mRNA molecules, which are then put into the cytoplasm, and that's how proteins are made all the time in our cells to be able to do what they need to do in our body. And so this mRNA is basically that step that then is converted to a protein. And the whole point is that the mRNA represents the spike protein of the virus, which is how the virus gets into our cells. And so it prevents the virus from being able to get into our cells by our cells making this protein, allowing our immune system to make antibodies to it, and then to be able to neutralize the virus as soon as we see it to prevent disease is how that works. The mRNA was modified such that it can, because mRNA is not very stable. So it was modified so that it can be more stable, so that it actually can make it to where it needs to go in your cells when you get vaccinated. And then it's coated in fat, essentially. Like it's a lipid complex is the scientific name, but essentially it's fat molecules that allow it, again, to be absorbed and then to get to where it needs to be in your cells. But outside of that, there is no microchip in this mRNA for tracking or anything like that. Now, in terms of the DNA, I heard a scientist describe this like perfectly, and I know I'm not going to be able to repeat it the way he did, but it was beautiful. But essentially, there are enzymes, which are proteins that catalyze reactions in your body that that are needed at every step of the making of DNA to a protein in your body. So in order for this mRNA molecule that's being given to you through the vaccine to be able to incorporate into your DNA, it has to have a specific enzyme to get from the outer part of the cell into the nucleus, and which it doesn't have. And even if that were to happen, once it gets into the nucleus, which is not possible, but if it was, then it needs another enzyme to go from being an mRNA back to DNA. And then, which is not possible because that enzyme. But for sake of argument,
terms, it ain't no way.
It's just no way. And this scientist that I heard, he just said it's easier for you to become Spider-Man from giving the vaccine than it is for.
I think some people might like that. They might like being Spider-Man.
Right, which I thought was just amazing. But the point is, it's just not possible. Okay. The other thing, so I have heard a lot of patients be very concerned about, our history with the Tuskegee experiments and other experiments that have been done, in our history on African Americans. One of the things I can appreciate about both of these studies is that African Americans, Hispanics, and different age groups were well represented. So we were about African Americans, were about 9.7%. We make up 13% of the population. So that was very, close to population representation. For Hispanic, it was about 26%, which is close to the representation. And so the study looked like the United States. Now, I did want to spend some time talking a little bit about side effects. So the common side effects are tiredness or fatigue, headache, chills, vomiting, diarrhea, muscle pain, joint pain, fever, and then pain at the site of injection. Now, not everybody experiences, all of those side effects, but those are definitely the potential side effects that you can experience. I definitely experienced some of them, and for sake of time, I can talk about my experience later. But it still, to me, doesn't compare to the potential symptoms and downstream effects of having COVID. What I will say is that the incidence of Bell's palsy, although we haven't, now that the vaccine has been given, there hasn't been any reported as of yet. It is statistically significant above what we see just kind of in the general population. And so that's definitely something to look out for. And then I kind of talked about the safety data. And then the only other thing I was going to say is that in terms of special populations, so interestingly, both the CDC and the American College of Obstetrics have said that, pregnant women, have the right to make the decision to get it. Breastfeeding, same. With all it, and the statement from the CDC is also for people that have autoimmune diseases should also be able to make the decision to get it. The only caveat I would say is that if you do have an autoimmune disease, sometimes it does depend on how immunocompromised you are, which would be based on what medication you're taking. So you should definitely talk to your doctor about that, as opposed to just kind of making that decision on your own. And then lastly, kids, right? So I think the oldest is 15 with the Pfizer, and I think is 18 with Moderna. So they are doing ongoing studies with kids. Kids definitely should get vaccinated. I'd see them in the future being able to, but the studies have to be there. All of what we know right now and the distribution of the vaccine right now is based on science. It shouldn't be any different for the kids. And so, that data is coming. It is still very, very important that we are social distancing, wearing our mask, and still doing all the same types of things that we've been doing, even as more and more people get vaccinated, because we know that it helps to prevent disease, but we do not know whether it prevents asymptomatic shedding of the virus. And so those wearing masks, social distancing is, still the measures that we have to protect us, from those 5%, that will still get it even with the vaccine. And then also what we don't know yet, about the effectiveness of the vaccine.
Awesome. So we are getting close to your time that we got to let you guys go because you have another engagement. So I'm going to ask a couple real quick questions. You can give me just quick answers, and then I'll give you both time to finish up to say anything, last moments, last thoughts you want to think about, throw out, and then we can hopefully hook up another time. And those who are putting up these questions, trust me, we have these questions on doc. We have them on. We were talking about them. It's just there's a lot of good information that we're getting, and we want to make sure that we get clarity on these things. So one of the things I've heard is about supplements. Do supplements work?
Yeah. So let me just say that, we could spend another hour talking about all the different supplements. Let me just highlight. So vitamin C, vitamin D, zinc, very crucial to immune function. But when you look at studies, particularly both actually with vitamin C and vitamin D, taking supplementation for vitamin C, there's a study that shows that it does not help with preventing the common cold, with certain illnesses with vitamin D. Giving supplementation of vitamin D did not change the outcome. And so I think with supplements, We need them, like I just said, certain vitamins are essential. You absorb vitamins and nutrients much better from your diet than you do from supplements. So it is much better to focus on a healthy, well-balanced diet so that you get the proper amount of vitamins and nutrients that your immune system needs, rather than supplementation. And, there's a lot of people that are doing like high doses, kind of a vitamin C. One of the points to make about that is that your body can only take in so much vitamin C. And once it reaches that limit, it excretes the rest of it. And so again, focus on healthy, well-balanced diet. Your body will get what it needs from what you're eating.
Awesome. Another small, quick one is, will we need to get the vaccine every year?
So that's a one that we don't completely know the answer to. What has been postulated right now, although we should not hang our hat on this, is that it probably, the immunity that we get from the vaccine will probably last a few years. Like it'll probably end up being longer than the flu vaccine, but we do not know that yet. So you should not, like, this is a prediction. This is not, time will tell, what the science will actually show. But because it's more similar to like the measles, virus, that's how, that prediction has been made. But the short answer is that we don't know.
Got you. All right. So you guys got about 4 minutes. I'm going to give you time. Davido or Rhino, what other things would you like to add on? Oh, let me address one thing real quick. There was a question about getting it again. So we already understand that there is no herd immunity. There are people that we even know within our Freedom family that have gotten it multiple times. So please know that there is no herd immunity when it comes to, it's not like the flu. Once you get it and you don't get it again. So yes, you can get it over and over and maybe over again. So I'm just want to put that out. So I want to leave it to you guys to any last moments, last seconds, thoughts that you want to put out there, something that you want to express. Hopefully we can get you guys on here on another Saturday night and we can go into it even more because we are pressed for time. I'm so sorry.
Right.
Go ahead.
I guess I would just like to say that I think, one of the good things that has come out of this, and Davido touched on it, is just, our ability to adapt. And I do think that that's incredible. And I think whether you find yourself in the situation where you have kind of done the good adaptive or the maladaptive, this is a new moment. You have new information, you can make new decisions. And so I would just, encourage you to kind of take this information and not walk in condemnation, but just arm yourself to be kind to yourself and to do those things necessary to, get through this successfully.
But I would add to that. We have the capacity to be really resilient. It's not that some people are tough and some people aren't, but self-awareness is a thing too. Mm-hmm. And when this happened, it kind of caught all of us off guard, right? And I think one way to think about it is we may have basically, like if something really bad pops off, you don't realize you've been holding your breath until it's over and you kind of exhale. I feel like in a spiritual sense, we might be doing that and really just kind of waiting for things to return to normal. And in doing that, it's not that we're inactive, but we might, there's this thing called the situation principle. This concept is situation principle that says in times of great stress, we revert back to what our typical coping strategies are, right? We go for what we know. And as my chicks have been saying so eloquently, these are different times, right? So it's really possible that you're doing your level best and using your best coping strategies, right? But those were coping strategies for what was, typical, right? And so you might find yourself in a quandary because what you typically didn't work, but it's actually normal. That's a great possibility that you doing what has always worked for you in the past may not really work right now. And so, take some time to reflect, give yourself the okay, forgive yourself, for not adapting in all areas, right? But also take that time to reflect. Why am I doing what I'm doing? Is it reducing the stress? Is it removing the source of the stress? If not, let me use my ability to adapt and do something different, right? Mm-hmm.
Thank you guys so much. You guys can't see all the responses, but people are thanking you guys so much for just being here, for dispelling, as Harold is saying, dispelling some of the misinformation that is out there. We so appreciate you guys. We're probably going to have you guys come back separately because you guys are too much together. You're too powerful as a powerful couple. We couldn't even get through a third of the questions, and y'all filled it up, and it's past our time. So we really, really appreciate you guys. Thank you. Everyone else, please look forward to seeing them soon. We're going to get them back on here. I don't know what we're going to do, but we're going to figure out their schedule, and we're going to work out getting them back on here so we could talk some more. This was definitely educational for us. This definitely was helpful. I think it really did help a lot of our congregation to really learn something new today. And exactly, State Mother, fantastic, such great information. I so appreciate it. We love you, State Mother. Thank you guys again. We are going to let them go because they have an engagement that they have to get to. So you guys go ahead. I'm going to put it on my face now, and so you guys can say goodbye.
Love you guys.
Thank you guys so much. So we really appreciate you. We appreciate having the Duprees with us. They were absolutely awesome. They were just great. They had a lot of great information. We hope that you, if you had any questions, some of the questions were probably answered in what they said. Go back and listen to it and watch both either on YouTube Live or Facebook Live and watch it again and get the information that you need. If you didn't, trust me, we will have them on here again and we will do something. So we'll get to these other questions as well. It was absolutely positively, it was mind blowing. I was sitting here just like, oh my goodness, I couldn't believe. And out of all the questions, again, we only got to about maybe a third of those questions. So it was good. And they had a lot of information and they were hitting on and touching on as you guys were texting and putting it up there. They were answering the questions. So we really, really appreciate them. Guys, we love you. We miss you guys. We're going to try to keep doing things like this where we even talk to not only to the priests, but we talk to other people in different areas and help us kind of cope with this pandemic and how we're going to come out of it, the vaccine, what's it going to look like on the other side. Those are the things we want, we're all looking forward to. So we're going to touch on those things in these sessions. So we're going to be talking to quite a few more people. Thank you again for coming out. Please don't forget to be with us tomorrow. We're going to have, for Pastor Rashid, he has a word from the Lord. Make sure that you guys are here to listen to it and watch it. It's going to be a wonderful, wonderful thing. We thank God for our pastor. We thank God for his wife, Sheila, who serve in such excellence and really do have such a love and concern for their people. Yeah, I lie to you not. That's quite naturally when I talk to Pastor Rashid, that's the talk that he talks. He has a concern and a love for his people. So we appreciate you guys. We will see you soon. Don't forget that we have our website is up. So please check that out when you have a chance. And again, we'll see you guys later. See you tomorrow. Fellowship together and worship together. Love you.